Well, it's easy to be a curator. It's maybe easy to see what a curator is doing, but it's not easy to do the job of a curator. I think there are so many misconceptions around people relocating to Europe or wherever, America or wherever, for maybe a better opportunity.
Today, we are going to talk about curatorship. We will also talk about a little aspect of the Ghanaian art scene. And allow me to introduce to you Nuna Adisenu and the founder of Compound House Gallery. Hi, Nuna.
Hi, Adisenu. Thank you very much for having me.
I really appreciate because I can understand your schedule in this busy city, making rounds and other things yet you pulled up, and I'm very happy for that.
You're welcome.
So to begin with, I would like us to talk about a little aspect of your background, where you had your tertiary education and the program that you've had, and how it inspired you to even come back to start up something here.
So let me just start from my secondary school. So I give a shout out to my secondary school. So I attended Presbyterian Boys Secondary School, up and known as PSEC.
Oh, I understand why you want to mention a big challenge. Oh, PSEC.
Yes, so yeah, I attended PSEC. That's where I did my secondary school education. I studied visual arts. So I did visual arts for 4 years. We were the last batch of the 4-year. So yeah, I did visual arts in school. I had a how do you call it? Compulsory electives, and then a couple of electives I selected. So I did picture making, I did sculpture, I did GKA. That was like a compulsory subject, and then amongst other things, we did a bit of graphic design. We dropped it at a point. We did textile, dropped it at
Oh wow!
So I majored in picture making and then sculpture.
That's
Yeah. From there, I enrolled at the University of Science and Technology. That was 2013, I guess, yeah, 2013. I enrolled in the painting and sculpture department. The first year was a foundational year, so we did a bit of painting and then a bit of sculpture the second semester. And the second year, then I majored in painting. I decided to go full-time into the painting program. So that's what I did for my undergraduate in KNUST. And then for my postgraduate, I went to Kingston University, that's in London. For that, I diverted a bit from my regular art practice. So I majored in a program that's called Art Market Appraisal and Professional Practice. It's a bit of mouth, but so that you know, I guess it's a bit of a diversion because then it's no longer an art practice, program that encourages an art practice, but rather maybe another kind of art practice that is tailored towards the art market and then, other peripheries of the art market. So that's what I did for my secondary school, undergraduate, and my postgraduate.
Wow.
Yes.
That's very interesting because I think the first time I met you was during a visit to the department. I think you came to give a lecture. That time I think I was in third year or final year. We were having an art market class, and our lecturer, Mr. Amprichun, that's Dr. now, sorry, so Dr. Amprichun, Huma. Yeah, he introduced you to us, and the kind of revelations that you gave us pertaining to the art markets were very insightful, and I was really inspired, trust me. So having you here is great. Very great. And talking about Kinstong, the life in London, there are many people who go and don't return, and they have genuine reasons because the art market here and the art scene is not that vibrant and big enough to contain some of them. But what pushed you? What made you settle, come back to your country to start something?
Yeah, so I think there are so many misconceptions around people relocating to Europe or wherever, America or wherever, for maybe a better opportunities within their own fields of study or fields of practice. And in our case, it's a bit understandable. So you find a lot of people maybe studying abroad and not returning. So they either find work or find a way to have a permanent residency or temporary residency or however it is in their countries. But for me, it wasn't such a direct decision I made from the very beginning. So I didn't go with the idea of returning or with the idea of staying. Or
Okay.
I just went there because I had to fulfill my master's program. So that was a 2-year program. So after I finished that, then I decided to work for a year, and then I actually decided to stay on for a bit. But it was never my idea to live there and maybe establish myself with my career there. I always had the idea to, always had at the back of my mind to come back to Ghana and establish something. However, the definitive shape, I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to, but I always knew I wanted to establish myself here and practice here in Ghana. So, I mean, after my program, I worked for an extra year or two, and then I returned to establish myself here. Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. So about coming back, I want us to delve into Compound House. I don't know if it came right after you came back or other things took place before you ended up with the. So if you can tell us a little bit about what happened.
I think from my undergraduate days, it's funny you mentioned Buma because Buma was also like a mentor to me. He's still a mentor to me, and especially during my undergraduate days, he was someone who used to always take notice of everything I did within my academic life and also my social and personal life.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and sometimes in my spiritual life,
Buma is someone,
exactly. So, I mean, and he's someone who has always taken a keen notice to whatever thing I do. So, from the undergraduates, from my undergraduate years, Buma always mentioned he noticed a certain business acumen about me because in my private life as well, I used to do a lot of businesses. I used to run a lot of businesses, and I think in those ones I excel very well, 100% I excel. So, he felt, maybe I should or I could, take a direction, with my business acumen and, my own art practice. I could, I could divert into that space, into that world. That's the art market.
Connection unsuccessful.
Because then
Check
you
your
realize
iPhone
that
section and try again.
the practice in the undergraduate program was mainly towards, learning how to make art.
Yeah.
So the institution then in turn were producing a lot of artists, but there was a certain deficit around producing other practitioners that would work hand in hand with the artists that the university was producing, then to make or to create a sustainable art ecosystem. So then Buma actually pushed me to pursue that program. So there were a couple of universities that I was looking at, but then Kinstong was what I settled on. Coincidentally, around that same period, I think my final year, the program director of the course I wanted to do, the program I wanted to offer in Kingston, Stephanie D. Force, Dr. Stephanie D. Force, currently. She also visited KNUST.
Wow.
So it was really a pleasure to have a visit. And then I think that again, I think she just visited to give also a presentation on her own practice and on what she was doing. So it wasn't really about the school, the university. But then later on, I got to know that she was in this university, and that was the same university I also attended. So then that was, I think, the direction, and that's how the conversation started. And then I pursued that program. So then after that, I worked at a couple of galleries. I worked at some auction houses. I decided to work with a lot of institutions just to gain a bit of experience of how it is to work on the other side, because then immediately after my undergrad, I was a teaching assistant. I was making my own art. I was, organizing with my friends to my collective at the time was Soft Black to put up exhibitions and do stuff. So I'd already put myself into that space where I was making art, showing art, and working with artists in that context. But then I felt that I also wanted to come on the other side, on the market side. So I did a bit of work with a couple of auction houses, I worked at the Christie's auction houses and the archives department. I worked at the Anderson's auction house. That's a Chinese auction house. Um, all those experiences were very interesting because the weren't like it wasn't anything familiar to the art I was already doing or the kind of art I was exposed to at the time. So then it was really exciting. I also worked in a museum, Dora Gordon House Museum, that's the Deutsche House Museum in London, and then I read some other galleries, and then finally I began working with physical one, Pascal Regis, so that's the director. So I began working at 50 Gold One, and that's where I sort of got a lot of first-hand information into how art gallery management, working with artists, the market side of things, going to fairs, selling art, interacting with collectors, building networks, connecting with people, but also just the administrative side of the gallery, how the gallery operated and functioned, who moves the gallery, and things like that. So it was like a whole like a cog where it involved so many tiny aspects that you had to gain first-hand information. So for me, it was something of a kind of a curiosity. I wanted to like know and learn and just find out things for myself. So I mean, out of that experience, then I realized this is something I also want to like do, right, or start myself back home in Ghana, because then I had a lot of friends who were also artists, and I think the most difficult thing at the time, I realized a lot of artists were facing, or some of the problems they were facing, a lot of workplaces to show their art, or avenues to to say their work and explain their work at the time. So I mean, I took it as an opportunity and as a challenge to come back and start this. So I mean, that's how Compound House started. So I returned to Ghana in 2021, and then Compound House established. So we opened with our first exhibition in 2022.
Okay.
So I was still working with Pascal at 50 Gold One for a year, even after I returned to Ghana. I was working remotely, so we did that, and then
Wow.
I started meeting, started Compound House. So that's the best story of Compound House.
That is very insightful and very interesting. Because just as you said, you coming from a community in Ghana, because since you are part of that department, you built or you are in a community of artists, because almost all those who graduate are potential artists in the making.
Yeah.
So going outside because of your potential to pursue the market systems in arts, and coming back to create a platform to house all these friends that we think will need that space is very recommending, very worth commending. And I think starting with your the gallery, I remember the board. I mean the people that made the review, and I think Tracy Thompson, and may I know the other people that are
So I mean, for Compound House, for where we're starting, the idea was to have a gallery that was an artist-led space, right? That was the first thing and most important thing, because then the idea was to sort of redistribute the agency back to the artists. Who better to handle the work of artists than artists themselves? It has its pros and cons, but I felt that was also another way to sort of maybe either groom and then find people who were naturally interested, or already interested in working within the gallery space, or working in some other context, but still working with artists, not practicing as artists themselves, but working hand in hand with artists to make things possible. So the idea of Compound House was to then have like a decentralized system where there wasn't any hierarchy as to there was this director or superstar director, superstar curator, or superstar maybe art handler or whatever. So then the idea was to reach out to a couple of my friends who I knew were also carving that path for themselves, and then invite them on board. So Tracy was the first person I spoke to, and it took some convincing to,
Yes.
because at the time she was also practicing as an artist, but then also as a curator. So you could describe her as a curator and artist, an artist curator, hybrid type of practice or career that she was also taking at the time. So she also was excited about what I was trying to do, but then she also brought in some very interesting and very worthy perspectives, right? So these were things I couldn't know, because then again, I didn't know everything.
Yeah.
So you'd assume Nuna knows everything, but no, I didn't know everything at the time. So Tracy brought out perspectives, but then also I had a direction of Boomer again, because then who was on my essentially led me onto this path. So Boomer was also played a very crucial role in the formation of Compound House as to the direction, especially, and also, how to just handle things, organize things, and start. You understand? So, I got also a lot of help from the Black Starlight Collective.
Yeah.
Because then again, I'm part of that collective, but then the role they played in terms of supporting, and yes, I think that was the biggest support, or the biggest form of support, or input I could get at the time. So lots of human resource and other support.
Shout outs to these people, Casey Thompson, Dr. Amprechi Mbuma, and the Black Starlight community.
Yeah.
So, about the gallery, is it a physical entity, or how does it work?
Yeah. So in the very beginning, the idea was to set up a gallery, so a physical space, to find a space, and then how do you call it? Would run out for the gallery program out of the space. But upon coming back to Ghana with my calculations that I did, my financial calculations that I was doing, I realized Ghana was really expensive. Or the things I was looking at were really expensive. So there were things that were out of my budget. I couldn't afford to rent a space, for example, in some of the high impact suburbs in Accra, or in East Legon, or Cantonment, or Sulu, or wherever, there was like a gallery district or an art district, or a place that was susceptible to like an art gallery establishment. So the rents were high, exuberant, and I couldn't just do it. So for me, not having a physical space. So just for information, we are not a physical space.
Okay.
So we operate as a nomadic space where we run multiple programming. So we have exhibitions, we have itineraries of interventions, talks, workshops, and maybe other site-specific interventions or installations that you could maybe call an exhibition, or you could call whatever you want to call it. So we've done a couple of those things. So the idea of not having a physical space didn't come out of me being like, oh, I don't want a physical space. No, because I wasn't getting anything, and I couldn't afford what I was getting. So then I decided to just think on my feet, and also do with what I had at the time. So I reached out to a space at Untamed Empire.
Okay.
Yeah, Untamed Empire is like this hub that also has makeshift container spaces into usable like studio spaces. So they have like a fashion pop-up space. They also have like a music producing like space, studio space. It's just like a hub for all creators.
Contained Empire along the stretch. Okay.
Exactly. So that was where we had our very first exhibition of some mobile quality, and so from there on, then we began also moving into other spaces, or collaborating with other institutions and other galleries or artists, institutions, or all that. So at the time, it also became a very interesting concept to me, right? Of how maybe the gallery might be a movable gallery, or a mobile gallery, or whatever, or whatever that could mean, and what shape that would take. So for me, it was something I was also trying out for the very first time. I'd never done it. So it meant I had to also be proactive into scouting for spaces and things like that. So that's how we started out, and we've been on a journey for 3 years. 3 years. Yeah.
Wow, that's worth celebrating, because 3 years in this ecosystem, it's really something. And talking about, though it came out of necessity, or you just try to do something. I think it works like this movie. Is it the Tom Hardy's movie Venom,
Venom.
where the entity
Just takes over.
takes over from it, so
Yeah.
it can live in the body, and
Yeah.
that's a very interesting idea.
Yeah. So it's more like, you are being controlled by a certain situation,
Yeah.
or you are being led by a certain situation, not out of your own necessity, but then you've sort of morphed and found a way to balance the two. So it's not really you wanting to do it, but it's also a need, and then you are still feeding into that need, and then you are still setting that need and or meeting it, executing it. So that's what we've been able to do.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's interesting. So about exhibitions, let's touch about a few exhibitions. Then we'll talk about the current one, the recent one we just.
So the very first exhibition we had was a solo exhibition of Samuel Bancotti. That show was a trilogy of shows. So, and we had worked in hand in hand with Tracy as well. So Tracy was the curator of the very first maturation. That was in Frankfurt in a space called Forum 1822. So that was the very first one we did. Tracy worked on. And that was my first show of this trilogy. So the next one was the one we had in Accra, and that was a Feast of the Sacred Heart.
Yeah.
That was a really exciting exhibition to me, because then for the gallery maybe inaugurating or establishing itself and sort of opening up to the Ghanaian scene for the very first time, that work wasn't a really, or that exhibition and the body of work put together wasn't a really conventional art exhibition for you to come to see. So we had to build the artist work in connection with the space. So you saw the exhibition and you realized that the space itself was the artwork.
Yeah.
So everything in the space was the artwork, the walls, everything. And so it was a really challenging, tough project to take on. And I have an able team, and at the time, I had a couple of people working with us. Branch was working with us as an assistant and managing, the space, the gallery, the production, everything, and taking care of all these peripherals. Hassan, Cole, Caleb, so many other people also helped us. Came to help us, Joe. And a lot of people used to come to just see what we were doing, how the space was taking shape, and how the exhibition itself was coming together. So, with a very excellent direction and curation by Tracy, we were able to pull it off. And since then we've gone on to do other exhibitions. And the beautiful thing also about working as in nomadic spaces, you have the opportunity to be able to travel to other spaces and then, stretch or open up, what the concept of what a gallery could be within different spaces or different regions. And that's what we were able to do at the time. So the next exhibition we did was another solo show of Hassan.
Okay, yeah.
And that was a 3-sided exhibition. Okay, so I was talking about the second exhibition.
Yeah, the second.
So that was Hassan's solo exhibition. That was also a multi-sided exhibition. So I was talking about how exciting it was to also move to other regions and other spaces, and the collaborations we're doing at the time. So Hassan's exhibition was a 3-sided exhibition in Accra, Kumasi, and Samara. We were able to pull that off. It was a really ambitious, but also a really challenging exhibition. We were able to pull everything off successfully, beautifully. And since then we've gone on to host exhibitions among so many other programming and programs, and also community collaborations. So yeah. And for Flower Power, that wasn't a compound health production. So that was Hassan's own solo exhibition, but that was hosted by World Phase Arts Practice. And that's also an artist running institution by Kusibotri, the artist Kusibotri. So I was invited as a curator for that show. Because of also my experience with Hassan's work and the close relationship I have with his work, itself. Hassan and Worldface invited me to be a curator on that show. So, I mean, aside Compound House, I'm also an independent curator working on shows, exhibitions with other institutions and galleries. So, yeah, I just don't work. I don't just work with Compound House. I work with other galleries as well. So that was one of the recent exhibitions that I curated, Flower Power. That was a bit of a shift from Hassan's own inquiry into like object making in collaboration with the idea of crafts making. And with Flower Power, there's a lot of imagery, especially figuration, that was coming into this work. And these are some of the things we wanted to highlight in this particular exhibition. A majority of the figures were coming from the Iroha ceremony within the Islamic community, and Hassan's work also has a very social aspect to it, where he engages the community which he comes from, which he loves all the time. So aside dealing with craft people, it's also dealing with traditions and also cultural systems within his environment. And the Arewa was one of those um, cultures or cultural phenomenon that he decided to delve into. So most of the work that we did, or me and myself as a curator, was also to understand what the Iowa situation was. Where did it come from? How did it originate? What were some of the traits of it, the characteristics of imagery within this cultural phenomenon? So that was what I was looking at. I was also thinking of the balance between religious and secular contingencies coming into the work. So there were you find out that even in society there's a certain pull and push between understanding religion and also understanding what a secular society would either accept or conform to. So these are some of the things I mean as a curator I was looking at, and also other cues that maybe might be a bit too long to talk about, but this and a few other cues were things I was looking at in that exhibition.
Thanks for sharing. So now I'm coming to your curatorial philosophies, some of the things that you work around, the philosophies that encompasses whatever you do.
Yeah. I mean, working as a curator, I think there's a certain general mystique around curators, where people think the curator is like some superhero, superhuman interventionist. I mean, the work is extremely nuanced. So a lot of people assume, it's easy to be a curator. It's maybe easy to see what a curator is doing, but it's not easy to do the job of curator, because then you need a lot of understanding into whichever artist you're working with, but also art in general, right? Your understanding of art history and certain philosophies within art itself, and there needs to be a grasp of it. Also, that the work of a curator ideally would be to just place the artist's work within a certain context or within a certain conversation and open it up to the public. One way a curator will do that is through exhibitions. So, some people would say an artist themselves would do an exhibition. Of course, like every artist could, put up works together in an exhibition. But then, as a curator, there are certain strategies that you would adopt or you use to set up an exhibition. It might be how maybe the visitors or people experience the exhibition, or what are some of the takeaways from the exhibition. Some of these things are apparent, some of them are tangible things you can actually see. Some of them are things you can't see but you can experience, and you can experience through maybe conversations with the artist or with the curator themselves. So I mean, there are so many aspects to it. There are so many also influences that would come into the work as a curator. There are curators who are interested in how do you call it, novelty. There are curators who are interested in scholarship. There are also curators who are interested in the material of the exhibition itself. I think for me, where my practice as a curator really takes shape is picking up a lot of cues from our everyday life, right? So the idea of the everyday is something that's very phenomenal within my practice. Trying to take cues from from our space. Maybe let me just speak particularly specifically to the Ghanaian context. Within the Ghanaian context, so I'm taking cues from, for example, architecture. I'm taking cues from social relationships. I'm taking cues from, for example, store setups, the way maybe market women set up what their wares in the market. I mean, the way even certain things just occur naturally in nature, right? There are so many things that you might overlook, but for me, those are the things I'm trying to maybe pay a second look at or take a closer look at. And some of these things inform the work I do as a curator. Sometimes they don't even inform it at all, but the way you'll be able to understand how things maybe naturally occur in nature, or how human interaction with their environments, with objects, with with space and everything, how that interaction works. Those are probably the things I decided to highlight within my practice as a curator. So there are so many angles I operate or I execute my work from. It also depends on the kind of project you're working with, right? There are multiple entry points into working with artists. So if it's a solo show, if it's a group show, even if it's a group show, the size of the group show, the location also speaks a lot. The demographic also speaks a lot. So there are so many things that goes on. So yeah, I mean, that's just a few to
That's
mention.
very interesting.
Yeah.
So I know there might not be a fact backing this, but it's obvious that the number of artists that we have in art scene,
Yeah.
it's outweighs the number of curators or other players in the art world in this current art scene that we have.
Yeah.
And also talking about the mystique or misconception that people have about curatorship, also sometimes forces people to pursue the practical aspects of studio, maybe studio practice, than maybe focusing on pursuing curatorship and the art market system. So I would like us to link that, then we progress to the art market. How does that affect the art market, especially in Ghana here?
Yeah. I mean, as you clearly stated, even though it's not backed with any tangible statistics, but out of our own observations, we've been able to come to a certain conclusion that the number of artists outweigh the number of curators, the number of galleries, the number of art dealers within our ecosystem that's in Ghana. I mean, as a gallerist or a curator myself, I'm personally encouraging and mentoring other young curators to also take up that mantle, right? So it could be the opportunity to just launch a curator's maybe work, or the inception of a curator's work. So I think that's one thing I'm also encouraging. Specifically the market, that's also another maybe nuanced structure within the art ecosystem in Ghana. And I think for the past maybe 10 years, we've seen a rapid growth of art market activity. So whether it's collecting, sales, dealership, a lot of that has increased. So I mean, now artists are having systems, or having some of these formal or informal systems where they're able to sell their work. Collectors or buyers are also having avenues where they're able to buy their work from, mostly directly from artist studios, other times from galleries, or other times from also art dealers who are operating independently or privately. So I mean, the art ecosystem in Ghana is obviously opening up, it's expanding. There are so many players coming into the scene, and yeah, it looks promising, and yeah, it looks exciting as well.
That's very and talking about the markets, we are still around the markets. I have seen, since our scene is very small, and missing some key elements like for example, the auction houses. And even in Africa, I think few countries like South Africa, which I know, have this kind of auction houses. So I would like to say our market is more primarily, since it's from the artist, maybe in the studio straight to someone, not really in the auction, which is the secondary market, if I'm right.
Yeah.
And how does that also affect the artists in terms of exposure to other communities and the world or globally?
So you're asking specifically of the auction market or the secondary market?
The auction or secondary.
One thing you need to understand is the Ghanaian art market hasn't really evolved so much, right? So, for example, where should I even, or period should I maybe situate the emergence of the Ghanaian art market from? I mean, since the inception of art as well. I mean, art where it's then put into a space of an exhibition, right? So, the sort of the correlation is once exhibitions are going on, then there's also a certain purchasing activity also going on or collecting also going on. So I mean, since the emergence of art within a proper setup of maybe an exhibition or gallery system, then also a collector system or the activities of collectors have also emerged. In Ghana, unfortunately, as you said, there's a certain wide margin between the number of artists or between the number of artworks that are being produced and between the number of people who are buying artworks or collected. So obviously there's a deficit, in that space. The thing within auction or the thing with auction houses is the main how do you call it, principle of an auction is based on supply and demand.
Yeah.
So if there's a certain demand for a particular work of art, then that work of art is brought to the auction block, and then maybe hundreds of people may bid for that one work, and then maybe the highest bidder gets to buy that work, right? So the concept is that maybe 1,000 people want a particular work.
Yeah.
So maybe that work is scarce, or that work is in vogue, or that work is trendy now and people want it, or that work is maybe a certain masterpiece that maybe has gone missing and now people want it back. So then the idea is to maybe open it up for everyone to have the opportunity to access it.
More like a democracy kind of setup.
Yes.
So you buy it, open it to people.
Exactly. But then the unfortunate thing is that there are not so many collectors in Ghana, right? There are not so many collectors. But that's not to say there are not a lot of people buying work, right? Because there's a very sharp distinction between people that buy artwork and then collectors. Collectors are people who have a certain instinct, they have a certain philosophy that guides the kind of works they buy. And maybe an art buyer is someone who maybe chances upon an artist's work and sees it, likes it, and buys it, maybe a one-off thing. But a collector is someone who builds, the attitude of buying consistently, maybe if it's once every month or once every year or whatever, maybe sometimes once every week or whatever it is. So collectors have a certain set out strategy as to how to build their own private collections of artworks. So then you realize that that system wouldn't really work in Ghana or work within a lot of African countries, because then again the art market systems are still young, are fairly young. I mean, as years go by, you would get to see a lot more auction houses coming up. Also, you need to understand these auction houses also operate as businesses.
Yeah.
So they would want to see a market that's viable. In a space like Nigeria, I know there are some private auction houses that are doing quite well. In South Africa, obviously, there's like a huge Strauss and Co. That's also doing amazing. So, I mean, it's all very nuance systems within the arts market, but primarily the secondary market is also interesting when you look at it, of how people are dealing with it in Ghana. So although there are no auction houses in Ghana, there are either Ghanaians buying from auction houses abroad, or there are Ghanaian artists whose works are showing up in auctions abroad. So I mean, there's it's not so straight and direct.
So talk about how young the art market is and even the culture of art consumption among the people not that high like that, and it's now building up and growing. I think that's understandable. Now this issue, I think it came up when we were talking. Now the market in terms of Africa is becoming like recognized. People are really consuming works of artists, and even checking out the population of artists in Africa, very huge. And sometimes I get worried. Let's come to Ghana because there are other countries that have established galleries that have the collection of their national artists. So I look at Ghana having prominent artists like Ella Natri, Ibrahim Mahama, Amwako Boafo, and many those you've worked with. It's worrying that sometimes there's no space that has collection of at least one collection from each of these artists, and it's all ends up abroad. I understand some get the funds and later build like how Ibrahim Mama is doing out there. But isn't it worrying that we are now having a conversation of restitution? And we know restitution, some of the works were looted, some were stolen, so there are basis for argument. But here lies the case that artists now sell, so it is official agreement between the people. I'm worried that it will get to a time that our young children coming will not get the opportunity to experience artworks from these people. Is there anything that can be done, or do you think it's also an issue?
Yeah, I mean that's you put it very perfectly. And this is also like a certain phenomenon I've been also very passionate about. How do we keep most of the work that we produce in Ghana? Also for the next generation to be able to have access to that cultural, heritage, because at the end of the day, all the artwork we're making, contributes or also builds and feeds into the, visual culture of the country. And that attitude is not one thing you can just maybe out of within a year build everything. No, it's over a very long period of years of history, stories, also so many other nuance situations that would allow a collection or a country's heritage of art to build a certain standard. So obviously, yes, it's a very worrying phenomenon, but unfortunately, that's the system you find ourselves in, right? So when you don't have a lot of education around the importance of collecting art or preserving art that's been made in the country, obviously, more established countries and systems and institutions that are abroad would obviously, move in and then buy and purchase and acquire most of these works. The interesting thing is that there are some private collectors that are actually also buying a lot of work in Ghana. So that's not just to say, oh, everything that's being produced or all the artworks and seconds are making it going out. Obviously, there are certain institutions or certain galleries that have a wider reach and they have a, how do you call it, a bigger audience, they have a bigger market. So it's just natural that you find out that there are a couple of a few good artists that maybe are not showing their work in Ghana, but are rather showing it with international or world-renowned galleries internationally. Recently, or a couple of years back, Amako had his very first show with the Gabosian Gallery. And then one very beautiful thing I felt was very exciting was that they brought the show back to Ghana in its own space and dot atelier, right? So that's an exciting thing to see that an artist would negotiate for that maybe structure or system to be allowed, right, for him. So I think it's also an onus on the artists themselves to also be critical of maybe having a balance. How many works am I selling to international collectors or collectors that are not based in Ghana? How am I also trying to preserve my own, practice and preserve my own work by allowing some of the work to remain in my studio in Ghana or with my family or with whatever, right? So there are artists that are being intentional about how they also sell work or how much work they put on the market, right? So there are some artists who are also silently building their own private collections. I think as years go by, we're just expectant and hopeful that state institutions like the museum, and there'll be more museums, either state, private, that will be able to acquire and house and then set a certain standard of preservation and heritage in the country. So I mean, it's a situation that's happening. It's a very difficult. It's very difficult to say, oh, how do we stop it or how do we? No, it's that's not the conversation. The conversation should be how are we also actively or strategically also positioning ourselves and the attitude to keep some of the work here. Yeah.
And I think you said it all. Because I remember recently some of the artists are even buying back some of the works that they sold in their early careers. And
Yeah.
I think, as you said, it has to evolve and get to that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now concluding or wrapping up, I would like few tips from you to give to upcoming artists in terms of how to take advantage of whatever wave that is going on in Africa, how they can present themselves, or even taking it from your personal point of view, what you look for in an artist to collaborate with, or even. And I think there are many artists who have artworks, but looking at where to go to, maybe people are not coming to me, but what move can I make? Did I just go up, go to a gallery? Do I go around calling curators or some of these things to help upcoming artists?
I think this is like you said what's like a pointer.
Yeah.
So this is not an advice, right? This is just like a strategy you could adopt as an artist. If you look at, I want to use maybe the music industry as a point of comparison, right? There are independent artists and there are artists that also have record labels they work with. So the record label is essentially maybe doing distribution and marketing for you, sometimes production. One thing to realize is within the visual arts or the arts system or the art ecosystem or the art space in Ghana, there are not a lot of artists have like managers or galleries to represent them. Right, so artists are doing everything on their own. That's extremely difficult. I would like to. That's extremely difficult. Also, as you've obviously mentioned, the disparity between the number of artists and the number of galleries in the country, then it's making it extremely, extremely difficult. So it's either artists are finding it difficult to reach out to galleries or to work with galleries, or galleries are also maybe being overwhelmed with the number of works or the quantity and the program and the pressure of working with artists. So unfortunately, there's a certain imbalance. But there are just a few things I would say. Marketing is very important, right? I'm not a marketing expert or a marketing guru, so I wouldn't be able to really give you what to do in terms of marketing. But marketing is really, really important. You should put yourself out there because no one is going to do that for you. No one is going to you don't have a manager that will be speaking to people in how. It's a very difficult way because then as an artist who has a studio practice, you also have to have a balance between making work and then marketing yourself or whatever. Not every artist also finds that confidence to put themselves out there. So then it puts them on a disadvantage. But then I mean marketing is a very important thing. So how do you put yourself out there? How do you network? Networking is also another form of marketing, I may say. So as an artist, you need to reach out to collectives, reach out to galleries. But I wouldn't advise artists to pursue galleries. Send them email, send them text, see my work, see my work. There are certain situations where you just send portfolios to galleries. Maybe that's fine. Maybe one gallery intern or gallery director might likely just randomly open the email and see the work. And if they are interested, they reach out to you or whatever. But now there's also the advent of Instagram, so that's perfect. So I would encourage artists to, treat Instagram as a portfolio, right? However you want to organize and and curate your own Instagram. You could do it as a portfolio or as your personal space. You could share your work, share studio life, share your personal life. Whatever you feel like is the true representation of what you're doing. Instagram is the perfect opportunity for young artists to carefully show their work there, right? That's just a few. I don't know the other specific things to do, but yeah, I would encourage artists to network a lot. Now there's because of Instagram again, you're able to reach whoever it is in the art world, curators and gallery directors. Strike up conversations. What I realize a lot of artists do is that they reach out to maybe a gallery director and they say, "Oh, give me an exhibition. I want to do a show in your gallery. I want to do this in your gallery." One thing a lot of artists need to understand is all these galleries have a program, right? So, there are certain galleries that have programs that they've planned for the next 3 years.
Okay.
Right. So listen, if the gallery doesn't know you, you don't expect them to just see an email from you of your portfolio and then give you a solution in that year. No, it doesn't work that way. So it's just a strategy. You build relationships, right? It's just like courting a lady or whatever. You build relationships. You don't just on the first day say marry me, right? You have to build a relationship, get to know them. They also get to know you, know your work, and then there might be something that'll come out of it. Sometimes nothing comes out of it, but it doesn't mean you just maybe sever the relationship. You keep an active relationship, a healthy one. Maybe you go to openings, you speak to people, and don't how do you call it, force your work or force yourself on galleries and curators. It's extremely difficult. In my own personal experience, because we are a fairly smaller gallery and now programming, our program is quite extensive, but the kind of responses I'm able to personally respond to all the inquiries I get from artists who maybe submit portfolios and be like, "Oh, I want you to give me an exhibition." I explain to them all my emails I reply to. So I explain to them, maybe we are not open to this at this time, but it'll be exciting to look at your portfolio. And I've seen some exciting work through people just sending their portfolios. So maybe send it. You might not know what's come out of it, but don't bang your hook on it and expect to send 100 maybe portfolios to 100 galleries and expect maybe in one response. If you don't get it, it's fine. Just move on and continue doing what you're doing. But another thing is just be passionate about what you're doing. There are a lot of people who are making art because of the trendiness of it, right? To become cool or to be part of the cool or the new cool. Do what makes you happy, but then you also need to understand what your goal is as an artist. What do you want to achieve out of the arts practice or out of your art career? There are some people who are chasing after fame or money or whatever. You just need to set your priorities right. And if you set your priorities right, you'll be able to attract what would come to you, or I don't know if you're getting me. You can understand me now, but if you position yourself in the right way, you would attract the right kind of people to work with. So yeah, that's it.
That's really good, golden. Yeah, because you said it all. Yeah, that's it. You said it all, and this brings us to the end of our conversation. I'll keep some questions for later because I know what I'm seeing is going